Okay, so just for the video, I'm going to repeat myself. So this session is really to show you guys how to use LoadUI. So I know a lot of you've used LoadRunner. So it's a very, very similar tool, very, very similar measurements, but I'll just show you how to do it. So the basics of performance testing is really simple. You're either doing a load test, or you're doing a stress test, or you're doing an endurance test. Is either one of the three of them. And what are you measuring? You're measuring your response time and you're measuring your transaction per second. Now, what is response time? Response time is how long it takes for the server to respond to a request. So don't forget, every web application has a client server relationship. The server is this big box that is sat somewhere in the office that answers everybody's request. The client could be you from your browser, it could be your phone, is anything that wants something from the server. So the response time is how long it takes for the server to reply to my response, right? To my request. That's the response time. The transaction per second is how many transactions can I do with the server within 1 second. And those are the two most important measurements we usually report, when we're doing performance testing. So obviously, response time will go up, and I told you guys what load is. So your load is the number of users. Don't forget, these are not real users. We call them virtual users. Because when you're doing your performance testing, you cannot call 1,000 users and tell them to sit on the computer at the same time, right? That's not possible. So we normally use what we call virtual users. So the higher the load, the higher the response time. And also, sometimes the higher the load, the higher the transaction per second. Because think about it, if I have 50 people trying to book a ticket at the same time, that will be 50 transactions or maybe even more going on per second. So they have they're related. Response time and transaction per second and load, they're related. So I think that's just refreshing your minds, make sure everyone is on the same page. And with Load Runner, I'm not going to go in there in detail, but everyone knows how to use the VUGen to create your script, to record your script. Everyone knows how to use controller to set your parameters, which is how many load, right? You want the duration of the test, how you want your load to be started, how you want your load to end, and things like that, right? That's where you do your controller. And the last one is what we call analyzer. Analyzer is essentially a report. It shows you your graph in a very beautiful way, and you can take your measurements. All right. So this is a Load UI. Load UI comes with SOAP UI. So meaning if you have SOAP UI, you don't need to download or install any other software. You can actually run your performance testing right away on SOAP UI. How do we do that? It's very simple. You create a new SOAP project, where you have the whistle, you have the endpoint, you customize your request message, and you push play. So I've done this already. This here is a very simple web service that tells the weather. So I give this web service a zip code, which is a postal code in America. They don't use postal code, they use zip code. So I give this web service an American zip code, and this web service returns the weather information for that city. So I gave it 3301. That's for a postal code or a zip code for a city in Florida. The name of the city is Fort Lauderdale. As you can see, the weather station in that city that is returning the results from is called Pompano Beach, and the weather ID, blah blah blah. Anyways, the temperature is 81 degrees. I would love to be there right now. And the humidity is 76. And the pressure, the wind pressure and things like that. So that's the weather for that city. It's a very simple web service. Everyone knows how to do this. So now, how do I run a performance test on this web service? It's also very simple. The first thing I need to do is I have to create what we call a test suite. So I'm going to create a new test suite. To do that, so this, let me close this. So this is my request message I'm running right now. This is request one, and that's it. Okay, good. Now, if I want to create a test suite, all I have to do is right click on this request message and say add to test case. Now it's telling me, Ty, you already have a test suite called Test Suite Monday. I'm going to say, just for you guys' sake, I want to create a new test suite. So I'm going to say, give me a new test suite, and I'm going to call it Test Suite. Today is Wednesday, so I'll call it Test Suite Wednesday. That's okay. And it's going to say, do you want a new test case inside that test suite? I'm going to say yes. And it's going to say, give it a name. Just call it test case 1. That's fine. So all this is default. Just press OK. And it's saying you want to get city weather by zip. Basically, it's saying you want me to make this request message into a test case. And I'll press OK. All right. So now, if you notice, every time, so I can close all this, it's noise. Every time you create a test case and a test suite, you will see something in there called load test. Now, that's where you do your performance test. So I know that my script works because I can just click on that. In my test case, I can click there and I can run it where everyone knows it works. But now, let's create a load test. So to do that, all you have to do is right click on the load test and say new load test. It says give it a name. I'm going to say just call it load test 1. That's fine. Press the OK button. And this is a very simple, it's so much simpler than load runner. So this is how you do it. Let me explain a few of the features here. The first one is called threads. Now, threads means number of users. So this is your load. And the good thing here is this does not limit us to only 50 users. See, it's saying virtual users. So it sets the number of virtual users you want to use to run this test. I can put 1,000 in there. I can put 500 in there because with SoapUI, there's no limit. So that's the beauty. So that's the first thing. It's called threads. The second thing is strategy. What does this mean? Strategy means it's not really important, but it means how do you want to um, run this test? If I say simple, then it shows me test delay and random, which is the most popular type. What is test delay? Test delay is measured in millisecond. It's telling me that, hi, do you want a delay after each transaction? And sometimes that is needed because if you try to mimic real life scenario, what are the chances of you having 500 users booking a ticket at the same time without a delay? It's probably not realistic. You're probably going to have one user go first, then you might have a 1 second delay, whatever it is, right? You will know the requirements and you know how to play with it. But the delay is in milliseconds, don't forget that, and 1000 millisecond is 1 second. So we're saying, okay, for 500 users, I want to delay each test by 1 second. I think that's too high. We don't need 1 second. We can say just 30 millisecond, right? Or it could be 0. If your test is saying no delay in this test, then you can make it 0. Random is basically, as you can see, is a number between 0 and 1. And what that is telling SoapUI or LoadUI is to randomize your test. So sometimes it might use 500, sometimes it might use 600, sometimes it might use 400, sometimes it might add a delay of just 1 or 20. And why do we have this? We have this because we're also trying to mimic a real life scenario. Because most of the time you won't find 500 people doing the same thing at the same time. So if you want to randomize it a little bit, To make it more realistic, then you can easily choose a number between 0 and 1. Okay? 1 means yes, make it random all the time. 0 means no random, right? I usually use 0.5. Basically saying, make it random half of the time, but you don't need to. If it's 0, then it's 0. If that's what you want, keep it 0. The next strategy is what we call thread. And thread is basically saying, I want my test to be based on my load. So I'm saying start, you know, by using just one, and when you get to 10 users. Even though I'm saying use 500, I mean, that doesn't really make sense. If I'm using 1 to 10, then this needs to be 10 really as well, right? But it's really, up to you. I don't use thread. I don't really use it. But, if you want, I don't know, you're running a test and you want to stop at a particular number, then you can use thread as your strategy. The next one, which I don't really use as well, is variant. I don't really use that, so I don't know what it is. But to be honest with you guys, all I use all the time is the simple. It's just simple. Let's see burst. What is that? Nah, I don't use that as well. Just keep it simple. Simple. If you want a delay, put your delay in there. If you want random, you can randomize it. Let's make it a little bit hard. So I'm only going to say 10 millisecond delay. And random, let's say 0.1. All right. Now the next one is the limit, which is your duration. How long do you want this test to go for? This is measured in seconds. So if I want a 1 minute test, then this will be 60 seconds. If I want a 1 day test, then that will be 24 hours times 60 minutes times 60 seconds to get me the number for 24 hours. I can also change my limit to number of runs. So I can say once you've reached 1,000 runs, stop. For whatever reason, right? It could be maybe I want to run the test 1,000 times. So I can say, okay, once you've reached 1,000, stop. We call that total runs. Or I can say runs per thread. Runs per thread is saying basically how many users do you want me to run at the same time. So if I say, well, I want you to run 500 users at the same time, I can say 500 runs per thread. So that means it will always limit every run to 500 runs per thread. Now be very careful if you use runs per thread, because runs per thread, once it gets to 500, it's going to stop, right? So if you're going to use this combination here, I would advise you to change this here to maybe thread and say, okay, start at maybe 1 and end at 500 or whatever it is. But your first time using this, just keep it simple. Just use time. Time is the simplest one. So use simple as your strategy. Let's say we want 100 users. We're keeping it simple. Test delay, we just want 10 millisecond. Random 0.1. And I'm saying run this test for 3 minutes. So that's 3 times 60. That would be 180 seconds. That's it. Now I can push play and I can run my test. So let's see what the measurement will be. So I'm going to run and it's starting the thread. So it's creating the users. Can you see it's creating the users? It's creating and it's started. So just like Load Runner, I can see my progress. So right now I'm at 6%, 7%, and over here is very easy to measure your results. So the minimum, maximum, and average is your response time, and this is coming back in, I believe, seconds. I believe this is seconds or milliseconds. Milliseconds. This is milliseconds, not seconds. It's milliseconds. And my TPS here is very easy. I can see it. So this is right now I can see for 100 users it's taking them an average of 100 millisecond, and there's about 930 transactions going on per second, right? So far, we have no errors, right? So far. So this is it. So it's a very, very simple tool to use. It's a lot simpler than LoadRunner, but don't forget LoadRunner is more powerful than LoadUI. But with LoadRunner, you can automate anything, right? It could be a GUI, it could be an API, it could be a website, it could be anything that you can automate and run performance testing on. But with LoadUI, you only can do this for a SOAP API web service or a REST web service. So that's the limitation of LoadUI. But it's very simple. You know, a lot of my students prefer to use LoadUI compared to LoadRunner. So far we are 62%. So I'm going to open up a table quickly. Let's open up a table. I mean, let's see to make sure things okay. So I'm going to insert a table while we wait to take my results. And in my table, I'm going to say I want to load TPS and let's do 3, 4. Okay, 4. Okay. So the first one is my load measurement. The second one is my RT in millisecond, and the next one is my TPS. So the first test I did, I'm using 100 users. So that's my load. So let me measure that. So I'm using 100 users. And the next one I'm going to use 200. And then last test I'm going to use 300. And let's see what the RT is for these guys. Alright, so I'm done. So it's 100% done. There was no error. Okay, and my average response time for 100 users is 91.73 milliseconds. That's still very, very fast. You know, millisecond. Don't forget, it's not even 1,000 millisecond is 1 second. So this is really fast, right? So 91.73. That's the response time. And how many transactions can we do in 1 second? And you can tell we can do a lot. I mean, just looking at this number here, you can tell. If 100 users is only taking them 91 millisecond to get a response back, obviously we can do a lot in 1 second. So it's saying we have 979.64 TPS. So I can just round it up to 980. So that's my TPS, 980. Okay, so now let's run the same test, increase our load to 200 users, and let's see what our results will be. Now, while this is running, can someone tell me what you expect the results to be when we have 200 users? What do you expect this to be, and what do you expect this to be? Can someone tell me?
Maybe double or half, like,
Is it going to be
91.73. Maybe, for 200, it would be around 150. Or maybe less than that. I don't know. So half of that, like this one, half of that, 980. So half of that, 450.
It will be more.
Give me a
Hello.
Yeah, I can hear you. Just give me a random. Let me guess. Just guess.
Maybe 180.
130. Okay. What about this one?
500.
Okay. All right.
This one, it's not 130. It's 180. I'm just guessing it. I don't know.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's good. Pretty. Do you want to try?
I'm guessing like
So we've doubled the load, Pretty. We've doubled the load. So
yes.
what do you think will happen when you double the load? What would happen to the response time, and what would happen to the TPS?
Response time will increase, TPS will decrease.
Okay. So she's saying Give me a number.
Uh,
It doesn't matter. Don't worry. Yeah,
same. It's like
sorry, you're
yeah, it's like nearly 180, and here it will be 400.
okay. All right. Let's see what we got. Okay, so it's still running. The response time, wow, 180. Good, you guys are really good. So I think you got the idea right. It's somewhere around this number. That's good. Now let's see TPS. Aha, I wanted to surprise you here. See, TPS is not
Sorry, I'm
lower.
not hearing. It's breaking. Voice is breaking.
My voice is breaking up.
Yes.
Oh, is it still breaking up, guys? Is it better now?
Yes, yes, breaking up. It was breaking up.
Okay, so let me know if it's better so I can carry on.
Yeah, now it's okay. Sometimes it is breaking.
Yeah, sometimes it's breaking.
Okay, okay. I will try and stay. I think it's whenever I move my head because I have a microphone on me. If I move my
Okay.
head, it breaks up.
Oh.
Mm.
So
Now
now,
it's better.
okay. So everybody, please go on mute so we don't hear no background noise. Um, Now we're done. This is a very good test. So the response time here is 176, right? Everyone was right. I think everybody was close. Let's go back into our spreadsheet. Everybody was close. Everybody
Yes.
guessed as much that the response time will go up. But the TPS, everybody got it wrong. Let me explain why you got it wrong. Don't forget, TPS is how many transactions per second I can do when my load goes up. Yes, your initial assumption is correct because you assumed that if I have more load, that's more stress. So that means the TPS should be lower. But what
Yes.
about if the server is not stressed? The server can actually handle a lot of load. So sometimes the TPS does not go down when the load goes up. TPS sometimes goes up when the load goes up. That tells me that the server is not stressed. That tells me the server can take more because I did 100, it was 980. I've done 200, is now showing me TPS of 1055. Can you see that? 1055. So it's 1055. So let me remove all your guesses. And this is telling me that the server is not stressed. Okay? So those are things you look out for yourself when you're doing this test, and those are things that I want you to pay attention to. The server is not stressed. So this tells me I can go higher. I can go 500 as my load. I can go 1000 maybe, right? Because the idea of performance testing is you want to know where the breaking point is. The breaking point is when the server begins to return error, meaning the server is not responding to a request. So far, it looks good. Let's try 300. Let's see what will happen. So I'm going to increase my load to 300 and I'm going to press play. Let's see.
I think it's breaking.
Can you guys hear me? If you can you see right now we have one error? So that tells me
Yep.
that I'm beginning to stress. Can you see? I'm beginning to stress the server. So the server, I've sent it a lot of. Oh, can you see? It's increasing now. 4. Ah, and it's saying the result is failing. Now I hope this is not my network because you guys told me I'm breaking up. So it could be because my network got shut down. It could be. As you can see, things are coming back up again. It's saying connection has been restored. So maybe it's my network. So maybe it's me. But it keeps getting higher and higher and higher. Okay. Let me check my internet connection just to make sure I'm still connected. If I go, Okay, I'm still connected. I think I still have the internet. So this is good. So we sent almost 1,000 blah blah blah. And we have 10.
No, your voice is breaking again.
Is breaking up again. All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop recording because I'm actually recording my voice in a video for you guys. I'm gonna stop recording and I'm gonna switch over to my phone so everybody can hear me from the phone. Okay. All right. This is a very good test. So what we have here, the average is 161.07. So let's go back into our spreadsheet and put that in there. 161. Ah, this is interesting. The response time is actually quicker for this compared to this. I think the reason is because of the failures. Because we had a few fails, so those ones they were not counted for, right? They came back quickly because it failed. I think that's the reason why you have a very low response time. TPS, let's see what TPS is saying. TPS here is showing us 1153. So put that back into your table. 1153. But don't forget, we also have 10 errors. So I think, looking at this server, I think this server can handle um, anywhere between, at the same time, I think it can handle anywhere between maybe 200 and, I don't know, between 200 users and maybe 280 users. I think that's their breaking point on this website. That's my guess. All right, so let me stop recording. I'm going to stop recording. I'm going to stop the video. Then I'm going to switch over to my phone so you guys can hear me properly.